It's yet another Damascus Encounter program, and today, as usual, we have another mind-blowing testimony of what God has done in the life of His child. Each of us start out in life with our dreams and our visions. And of course, when Jesus comes in, it takes a new twist, and then we choose to follow Him. And our testimony for today is one that you will like because Jesus made all the difference. I have with me in the studio Pastor David Ode Onoa. Pastor Onoa, welcome to the Damascus Encounter.
Thank you, my brother.
It's a joy to have you.
You're welcome.
Let's begin your sharing from about you telling us of your childhood days. What was it like?
Thank you, and thank you, viewer. I was born so many years ago in the village of Okwenehe, Adayeche, in Uju local government of Benue State, Middle Belt of Nigeria, to the family of Elder and Mrs. James Onwadikwe. Growing up in the village was very exciting. My father was a farmer, and I took after him, loving farming and hunting rodents and other games that were found in the village in those days. And it happened when my father decided that I should go to school. People were insulting him because I was a big farmer. Why should you send your children to school? But he saw the vision that tomorrow would be better, and so he decided that we should go.
So it was not conventional for kids to go to school at the time?
At our time, no, it wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't. They know you by the number of heaps and lines that you can make in the farm.
In the farm?
Yes.
Wow.
That was it. And also when it's dry season, you are known as a man by the number of rabbits and grass cutters, snakes, and other things that you can bring home from your venture.
Okay.
In fishing, I was also very good at those things. But then I decided to go to school. God was so kind to me. During my primary school days, I was very bright.
Okay.
Of course, the first term in primary school, I took second position, and the rest, till I finished my primary school, I was first. In fact, I had to skip a grade. From primary 1, I was taken to primary 3.
Wow.
Oh, yes. And in primary 5, first term, my teacher decided I should write common entrance examination, and I did. I did not do primary 6.
Primary 6.
Yes. And so, God so kind, I was taken as a very young man, 14, 15 years at a time, to the secondary school. I finished secondary school, and I didn't further my education immediately.
Okay.
While in the senior secondary school, I had to join some group of boys to play big boy. We were skipping classes, and so in my final year, my result was not too good. And so that stultified my furthering education. I had to wait for many years before I eventually went to the university, first, second, and tertiary, the third degree. And God has so much loved me that in spite of the vices I went into, because when I was growing up, like I said earlier, I joined drinking, smoking, and even smoking weeds. I remember of a certain experience after smoking, a thing went to my head, and I left where I was working as a baker. And I was nearly knocked up by a trailer.
Very cool.
I remember that was the year I finished secondary school at Boko, 1982. But God has better plans for me, because I was born into a Christian family, and so we took it for granted. My father, the leader of the church, my mother was the women leader. Actually, I was born into Assemblies of God Church, one of the Pentecostal churches. Okay. So my parents did everything. Most of the things I was doing was behind their knowledge. They didn't know about it. They didn't know that I was into anything.
So let's fast track a little bit in all these years as you grew up and your journey through primary and secondary school education.
Yes, sir.
What sort of dreams or vision did you have for yourself, looking into your future and what you wanted to be?
Actually, the one dream I have is to become a military officer, especially an army officer.
A soldier?
A soldier. I love to be a soldier.
Why?
Number one thing is when I started watching movies of military exploits, I see myself one day taking up a gun to defend my country and also to defend the defenseless. And secondly, we had 2 soldiers from my village at the time. Each time they go home, the type of respect they receive, people flock around them, you know. So I say, why not? Why can't I become one of the soldiers one day? So these are the 3 things that were propelling my dream to become a soldier.
That's interesting. So your attempt to be a military person, was this all after secondary school? And how exactly did you try to pursue that dream?
It was after the secondary school that I started pursuing my dream to become a soldier. In 1993, I bought a form to enlist into the Nigerian Defense Academy. I was a salesman then in one of the companies there in Kaduna. But Nigerian factor being what it is, sometimes you need to have a godfather. So after submitting everything, they say you will hear from us. The popular parlance, when you will hear from us, that means there's nothing for you. So I failed that attempt. I had to wait for another 3 years. That was in 1986. I decided to join the army through recruitment. We went to the army formation in Makurdi, Benue State, and we were given all the drill, running, lying down, doing all kinds of maneuvering. I was so sure that I'm going to be taken. But when it came to the selection, the final selection, we were lined up and we have to measure up to a certain height. And so when it got to my turn, I got there and I was far below the bar. And painfully, I had to walk away. But shortly after that, in 1988, the Lord called me into the Lord's army, where height, where godfatherism, background and whatever doesn't count, did not count for anything.
It was just God calling.
God's calling. In fact, I'm a product of grace.
So, very briefly, can you let us into, after the disappointment of not getting into the military, I'm sure that must have been a little bit difficult moment for you.
Yes.
So, what did you do between that time and when this call from God came?
Good. I went into doing menial jobs, whatever I can find doing, because I never want to be a burden to my parents after they have labored to train me up to secondary school level. So fate smiled on me. I got a job in a private construction company known as Sweet General Contractors, SGC in Makurdi. I was their salesman from 1987 till 1989 when I left to join the ministry.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's talk about when you joined the ministry. Was this coming into the Assemblies of God ministry as a pastor or Seventh-day Adventist Church?
I was a member of Assemblies of God Church, as I said, until the 19th of February 1988, when the Lord called me to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And how did it happen? I was sick and admitted for up to 2 weeks. And while in the hospital, one night I had a dream. And the dream was that the Lord appeared to me and called me by my name 3 times. And when I answered, he said, I have called you out to lead my people out of darkness and deception. This was what the Lord spoke to me in a dream.
You heard this vividly in your dream?
Vividly in my dream.
Did you see any figure? Did you?
Well, I saw a bright light.
Okay.
A bright light calling unto me. And when out of fear, I woke up and prayed. I lay down again. After a short while, it happened again. And this time, the Lord showed me an angel with a long sword drawn. And he said, David, as long as you are obedient, this angel will defend you. Do not be afraid. Go and lead my people out of darkness and deception. These are the very words. I still remember them.
Right there in your dream?
In my dream.
Okay.
And the third time it happened, the Lord said, David, your sickness is healed. And so, it happened on a Friday night. I had a dream. The following day was Saturday. So when I woke up in the morning, what I did was I was going from room to pray for other sick people. In fact, for the 2 weeks I spent in the hospital, I could not drink water. Because when they give me my drugs with water, I will throw up. So they were giving me Lucozade. That's right.
Okay.
I could take Lucozade, but water, I can't take it.
An energy booster.
Yeah, well, so, but that day, I took water and I did not throw. So I went around the hospital and prayed for every sick person like myself. And so I went back and told the doctor, I am okay, I should be discharged. The doctor said they don't discharge on weekends. I have to wait till Monday.
Okay.
So I had to wait against my will. But when they tested me, I was well. And that is how I was discharged from the hospital.
So, tell me, God called you.
Yes.
You had this dream. He spoke to you.
Yes.
And did you try to imagine where he was calling into? That is, what denomination were you?
Very good.
Did you hear about Seventh-day Adventist Church before this time? How did you?
As a matter of fact, I've
decide?
never had anything Seventh-day Adventist before this time. I only heard about Sabbath keepers, but I don't believe they are around. In fact, in my former church, we don't even believe on the Sabbath, and we look at the Sabbath keepers as those who are still in the Old Testament and don't believe in Christ. But what happened was that the following day, in the morning, after the dream, my wife came to see me in the hospital, and she came with some mails.
Okay.
Yes. And so in the mail, I saw some books. I opened it, I saw some books, and one of the books was written, God's Sabbath God's Sabbath or man's Sabbath. Which day is the true Sabbath? I said, which day is the true Sabbath? Written by late Armstrong. I've forgotten the first name.
Okay.
All right. So I read through, out of curiosity, I read through the pamphlet, and at the end, the man threw a challenge that says, if you can point one place in the scripture that says you should keep the Sabbath, keep Sunday holy, that he is ready to give $10 million. And the text of scripture that caught me to my bone is, and still is, James chapter 2, verse 10 to 12, that says, he that keeps the whole law, yet offend in one point, is guilty of all. I wanted to be sure of what law. He said, for he that said, thou shalt not kill, say also thou shalt not commit adultery.
Oh, yeah.
If thou does not kill, but thou commit adultery, thou wilt become a transgressor of the law. Pointing to the 10 Commandments. It was then I look at it, went back to study the scripture, let me look at the commandments again, and in looking at the commandments, commandment number 4 talk about the Sabbath.
Okay.
And now comparing with the evidence of this man that wrote about the Sabbath, Armstrong, I became convinced that truly I am breaking the Sabbath. So, after discharge from the hospital, because like I told you, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, I was the school teacher. Okay. So I was a person that is known in the church. And members were coming to me. In fact, the morning of my discharge, it It was a reverend that came to pray for me. And I saw that reverend in my dream. The last night I spent, that the reverend came to pray for me. And in the morning, as I had a knock on the door, it was the very Reverend Michael Ogbaji, that's the name. He's late now. So when he came in, he said, my friend, what are you doing here? I said, I've been in the hospital the past 2 weeks. I said, how do you come here? He said, he was just coming and the Spirit just ministered to him to branch, and he came. Then I told him, I said, sir, I saw you yesterday. This is the same dress that you wore to come to the hospital and pray for me. And the man prayed, powerful prayer for me. That day I was discharged from the hospital. And so when the resident pastor of my church, Reverend Gabriel Obarike, that is the name, he came to visit me, and I told him my encounter with the Lord while in the hospital. He was so happy. And I said, sir, I won't be coming to the church for some time. Give me time. Because the Lord gave me an assignment and I want to do a research on it. He said, no problem. So I did my research to be sure whether this is real or it is hallucination. So at the end of that week, my father came from the village. That time he was still alive. He came to see me, and I told him my dream. He arrived on Friday, and on Saturday morning I said, Papa, I want to go and pray somewhere. And my father, when he hears prayer, he's very happy. He said, you can go, my son. And so I went. My search was, I'm looking for a place, quiet place to pray. I wanted to pray and fast that day. So on my way, I saw a group of people in a small church. And the Spirit said, David, this is the place. I heard the voice. So I branched.
You heard the voice, or you just felt, this is it?
This is the place. The voice told me, David, this is the place. And so I went there. It was during Sabbath school time. And they were already in various classes. So the class who was studying under a mango tree was led by then Elder Apeseza Num Anenga, who later became Pastor A.N. Anenga.
Wow.
And whom the Lord called to rest earlier this year.
Recently, yeah.
Very good, recently. So he was one teaching the class. And when I went in, I sat down. I remember the lesson for that day is titled Lesson from the Sanctuary. Lesson from the Sanctuary. And the memory text was taken from St. John chapter 1 verse 14 that says, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. My voice is not too good. In those days we used to sing memory verses.
Okay.
Yes. So the man handled the lesson, but I was there very apprehensive, because even though the Lord is talking about Sabbath, all my life it is Sunday.
Sunday you have known.
So I just sat down there defensively. And at the end of the lesson, he said, does anybody have any question? I said, yes, sir. I raised hand. Out of intuition like that, I raised hand and I asked the first question. And I thought I would have more questions to ask. But by the time Pastor Nenga answered the question, I was defeated hands down. For the first time, somebody to answer me satisfactorily. I said, oh.
And straight from the Bible.
Straight from the Bible, very good. So after the Sabbath school, we went in, continued with the service. And then I saw people coming out from one small room. And, another voice was telling me, that is the Juju house. What is happening? Because in my former church, once we come, the leaders sit in front of the church from Sunday school to the end of the something.
Okay.
But here, the people are coming from inside one small room.
The vestry.
The vestry, right? So, at the end of the service, out of curiosity, I went and lifted the curtain to see if there is anything over there. The only thing I saw was a table and some chairs and a record book, that's all. And so I continued. In fact, at the end of the service, Pastor Nenga invited me over, and he said, I want to invite you for lunch in my house. I was thinking, I started out to fast and pray, and now I wouldn't want to look as a Pharisee by saying, "Sir, I'm fasting." I said,
no.
"No." So I followed him. On the way, he said, "Brother David, who are you? Tell me your story." Yeah, I narrated everything to him, as I just said to you here. And he said, "Brother David, I've had testimonies, but this one is exceptional." I said, "Well, I'm saying what I saw. I'm not cooking up anything. It is what happened to me." We went into the house. We had lunch. After a few hours, he said, can you accompany me to the prison? We used to have prison ministry.
Okay.
So I followed him to the prison. We had a session with them, and it introduced me to that ministry. As long as I was in Makudi, I was with him. And then until when I joined the ministry, I continued that prison ministry. I've been able to visit several prisons across Nigeria. Benin prison, I was there twice. Makudi prison. In Lafia, where I was, which was my first station, I was friendly with the officers to the point that they released 27 prisoners for me to go and baptize outside the prison walls. It was wonderful.
That's awesome.
27 prisoners.
That's awesome.
They gave me, waters. They went with us to the river. We baptized and came back.
And brought them back to
brought
the
them
prison.
back. It was wonderful.
Amazing.
That was the highest point I've recorded in the prison ministry.
That was awesome. So let me ask you this. All of this, getting introduced to the prison ministry, happened in one day as you set out to go for a quiet place to pray.
Yes, sir.
And then you got the conviction, this is the place,
Yes.
this is the church, you joined.
Yes.
And then all of this transpired.
Yes.
I want you to share a little bit on the aspect of when it dawned on you that you said to yourself, I'll be a part of this church. And then the reaction from home, your parents.
In fact, when I got back home and they welcomed me, I didn't tell them all that happened. Since I said I was going for fasting, I came back in the evening.
Okay.
But then the following Sabbath, I went to church. I told my wife, let's go to church. My wife happens to be the daughter of a reverend.
Okay.
They say, no way, it's not going anywhere. If you want to go, go alone.
Did you told her already about your conversion
yes,
experience then?
I did,
Okay.
I did. She's aware of my conversion experience.
Okay.
And she said, let's be praying. But me, I've already taken a step. When I got to the church, I found peace.
Yeah.
You know, and in those days, when we finish service, some of us will stay back in the church, you know, do Bible study. In fact, that very day I went to the church, I enlisted in the youth ministry. I love youth ministry too.
Okay.
So I was such a busy and committed church member, even when I was in my former church. Now, at the end of the first quarter, because I joined the church at the end of February. The first quarter ended in March. In April, I was made assistant Sabbath school teacher.
Wow.
When they saw my contribution, you know,
And
they
the
said,
zeal.
and the zeal, I was made a Sabbath school teacher. Then, by the end of the year, they were having church election. I was elected as assistant church clerk and a substantive Sabbath school teacher.
Okay.
Before the end of that year, the substantive church clerk relocated to Aba, and I was made the substantive church clerk. I held that post for 2 years, and then I was made a youth leader of our local church. I love it. And then the last year I served in that church before joining the ministry, I was the head deacon of the church. That was 1993.
Amazing.
Amazing, yes.
Amazing.
Then,
I was wondering, so your parents,
my
when you
parents,
told them,
now
yeah.
let's talk about my parents. When my parents had this, it didn't go down well with them. My father, the leader of the church in my village, my mother, women leader, my in-law, reverend. It didn't go down well with them. So they asked me to come home. I went home, I met with them and told them I wanted to address the church. The pastor knowing that he would not stand a chance He said, no, I don't have this thing. Let the leaders of the church meet with me. So the leader of church, they met with me. I told them my story and all that. And they said, David, you are still a young man. Be careful. This church you have gone, you don't know what is there. But this church, you have been there all your life. I said, well, it's not a matter of where I was born or how I was born, but it's a matter of conviction. I said, Papa, my dad, I'm grateful to you for the education you gave me. But today, out of, utmost humility, I have seen what you haven't seen. You bought education for me. So I have gone a little bit ahead of where you are right now, beyond what you are this thing. And so please allow me to follow my conviction. And I invite you, it's not too late. Let's
come
worship
join us.
God. Come join us. It was fire.
Wow.
It was fire. In fact, it got to a point that my in-laws, they thought they could use my wife against me. They tried, but later, my wife didn't join me immediately. I told you I became an Adventist in 1988. My wife joined the church in 1991.
Okay.
That's 3 years later. And hers too was a dream. She said one night she heard a voice calling her by name. And when she answered, he said, stop persecuting your husband. If you want your salvation, declare to become a Seventh-day Adventist. In fact, she was telling me this thing, crying. And first of all, she knelt down, I should forgive her. I said, for what? That is what the voice told her in her dream. And so, please, as from today, I'm joining you. We're worshiping together. I said, please, let me hear you again. Are you coming to the church because I'm a member of the church, or you are coming out of your own personal conviction? He said, the Lord spoke to me, and I will not be rebellious against the voice of God.
That's very amazing, Pastor Noah, because we'll round up this aspect of the program right now, and then we'll come back as you continue your story. Thank you very much for sharing your story today. We'll take it up next time as we continue on the program.
Thank you very much.
That will be all on today's edition of the Damascus Encounter. You have been listening to Pastor David Ode Onoa, who has shared his conversion experience, how God spoke to him in a dream and gave him directives, and eventually he has become a Seventh-day Adventist. But what happened after all of this, we'll be sharing with you as he continues his testimony in the next edition of the program. Until we meet again on that next edition, I want to say keep watching Hope Channel and looking out for your Damascus Encounter. Bye-bye.